Hey, it's Jason from Team Ignis again, coming back with another video. This time it's on my Great Nature deck, which is kind of a weird build. Most people run different cards than I run, so I just wanted to talk really quickly about it. So obviously it's in a cell deck, and we start out with the first kind of controversial thing in that, you know, most people run different a different grade 3 lineup than this, but we have 3 Leopold, and that's because he really works best when he's ridden on something else. I never really feel a shortage of Leopold. A 3 of versus a 4 of isn't as big of a difference as a 2 of versus a 3 of. So you'll never really be missing him. And if you mill him, you can get him with Tank Mouse, but he's a really good card. He's just best when you can ride him over another grade 3. So that's why I was willing to sacrifice the 1, because I knew that by the time he'd be the most useful, I'd have another one of him. And then the main grade 3, like the first ride you want to get into, is Hammsuke. And that's because you can get 2 Accel circles, and then either while they're at grade 2, if you high rolled, or grade 3, you get 2 Accel circles, which is really nice, and you can fill them up for free from cards in the deck. So he's like so good. He is like insanely good. So the strategy for these 2 cards and how they like interact with each other is to do the Hammsuke condition, ride into Hammsuke, discard 2, get 2 Accel circles out on the field, and then ride Leopold and get your 3rd Accel circle on the field and fill up your field with Leopold, or get power. It's really all depends on what you mill, but it turns out that most of the time when you do it, you just end up getting the field buff and maybe occasionally a power buff. But I do run 8 grade 3s, and the 4th grade 3 that would normally be Leopold is an Armored Instructor Bison, and I run him because he can, if you don't hit your Hammsuke condition, but you still want to hit your Leopold condition the best, you ride into him, and you can, in a sense, still hit your Hammsuke condition. You don't have 2 Accel circles, but you can, like if you have something on an Accel circle, you can swing with it twice, and it gets plus 5k the second time. So it's just a good little secondary option. So, you know, they all have Accel markers. They're all good cards. You know, people who don't run the Hammsuke build actually run 4 Leopold, 4 Armed Instructor Bison, which I think is big dumb. But, you know, it's whatever. So this is what I run for my grade 3 lineup. I run 1 Instructor Bison, 4 Hammsuke grade 3, and 3 Leopold. And then now we'll move on to grade 2s. So this is a staple, and you must run this. This is 4 Binoculus Tiger. He is so good. So his skill is that you counterblast 1, and you mill the top card of the deck, which means you place the top card of the deck into the drop zone. And if it was a normal unit, you draw. And this is kind of crazy. So the normal unit draw is good. It's basically pay 1 to get 1, counterblast 1 to get 1 when it attacks. But when it attacks a Vanguard, if you mill the trigger, which is already like oof, but you know, you mill a trigger and you get to give 5,000 to 3 of your units, which is like power wise worth more than a trigger, and you retire an opponent's rear guard. So it's like, yeah, it's a really good skill. Especially just for a CB1, like, it's a really good skill. This deck does lack countercharging, but honestly, I don't feel it too hard because there's only like 1 or 2 cards in this deck that countercharge, and that's Armed Instructor Bison and Binoculus Tiger. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the rest deal with soul, or the cost is just milling. So the next must-have, all of the grade 2s are must-haves, by the way, is Pencil Knight Hammsuke. He gets plus 3k when Pencil Hero Hammsuke is on the Vanguard, which is the grade 3 Hammsuke. And obviously his name is like really important because the grade 3 Hammsuke does require the 1 and 2 to be in soul for his effect to go off. But then he also gets a nice little plus 5k whenever Hammsuke grade 1 is in soul, which is really good because you're swinging for 14. If you want to rush, you can call out a Binoculus, one of him, and just some other card, and you know, hit him really quick with 3 good attacks, and they really can't deal with it. So then this is my favorite card in this deck. I love the art. Put it out of the glare so you guys can see a little better, but it's Geograph Giant. He is gorgeous, by the way, his art. But his skill is even better, which is that he gets 8k whenever he's on an additional rearguard circle, which might not sound too impressive, but if you think about what that means, that's continuous, that's always. So when it's their turn or your turn, he gets plus 8k whenever he's on an Accel marker. So when he's attacking, his base just basically like is 27,000. So it's like, oof. Get a front trigger, it's 37,000. Binoculus Tiger boost, up to 42. And if you get another trigger on that, if you're blessed with that, you're at 57 already. So he stacks like crazy. And given the amount of accel circles you get, you need to run 4, because I have had games where I filled up all 4 of my accel circles with Geograph Giants, and it's like 27, 27, 27, 27. They're like, what the hell? I cannot deal with this. So it is a great card. The Hammsuke grade 3 really exists in my eyes to pump out 2 accel circles, and then you put 2 Geograph Giants on them. And it's like, it is magnificent when it happens properly. I won most of my games in BCS Atlanta, and it was because of this hard rush strategy. The hamsters really only exist for their name sake. If I mean, obviously I like the art, but if I didn't need to run them, if I could run like a barcode zebra over the hamster, I would. But the other 2 cards are better than the barcode zebra, and he has the name condition that I need, so that's why we run those grade 2s. So we run 12 grade 2s, 4 Binoculus Tiger, 4 Geograph Giant, and 4 of the Hammsuke grade 2. And then on to grade 1s, and this is also a little bit different than what a lot of people run, but I think this works the best. So a friend told me recently that one of the defining factors of this deck was Monoculus Tiger, and I was like, that's kind of dumb, because his skill is that when he boosts a rear guard, you can Soul Blast 1 and mill a card. And then if you milled a normal unit, they can't PG it, and if you milled a trigger, then they can only call triggers, from their hand to guard it. And it works pretty well if you're just trying to push through on that final attack, but honestly, it's good. It's a good card, that's why I run him, but you only need a 3 of. You'll always get your required amount of Monoculus Tigers in any given game. An important card, however, though, like probably the most important card in the game, in a sense, is the grade 1 Hammsuke. You need him in your soul, and he is one of the best cards in the game skill-wise as well, because he gets that nice +4 whenever Hero Hammsuke is on the Vanguard, so he's a 12k base, like whenever your Vanguard is Pencil Hero, so that's good because it can hit most decks, just not Force. But then the other skill that's really good is when it's the end of your turn, Soul Blast 1, you put him in your soul, and then you search your deck for the grade 2 Hammsuke. And why that's really good is because often I'll have him in my hand, and then I'll try to get another grade 1. So I'll ride into the grade 1, this is Monoculus, and then I will Soul Blast the starter, move him into soul, and search my deck for a Hammsuke grade 2, which serves 2 purposes. 1, it gets the grade 1 in the soul for Hammsuke grade 3. 2, it gives me an option to ride if I didn't have a grade 2. And 3, it thins the deck for triggers, so you're more likely to get a trigger in the future. So it's like super good and on many levels, not just the name level. Some people even run the grade 2 and grade 1 Hammsuke when they don't run the grade 3 just because it thins so well. And by the end of the game, it is true that I'm getting, single triggers, double triggers. I'm just doing better in that regard. So he's a great card. And then I run a 2 of Stamp Sea Otter, who has gorgeous art, but also is a really good card in specific situations, which is why I run 2. And if you didn't know, he's a promo, and his skill is that he cannot be retired by card effects. And so basically, that is like, hey, Shadow Paladin, you're not going to win this game. So it shuts down specific decks that focus on retiring. Narukami can still bind you, so can Ubatama. But like if I'm going against another Great Nature deck, I guess, because Binoculus, or especially decks that are like, I choose a card and retire it, it's like, all right, I choose this card, continue please. And they're like, if a card was retired, they get a skill, but they don't get that skill because no card was retired. So it's just kind of a big, like, it stops decks that require retiring, in their tracks, and so I love it for that. But then lastly, in my grade 1 for Tank Mouse, you must run this card. It is super good. Once per turn, which kind of sucks, but still. Once per turn, when a card is put in the drop from your deck, you can counterblast 1 and return it to your hand. So let's say you're having a good old time, you got a Binoculus, maybe a Leopold on the Guardian Circle, and you mill a PG. It's like, it's a trigger, so you get the trigger effect of whatever card you wanted to do, but it's a PG in the drop. You can just counterblast 1, get the PG to your hand, or anything, once per turn. And it's super good because this milling mechanic would suck. It would have the dark irregulars problem where like you soul charge all your triggers, or like you soul charge cards you need later. Except if dark irregulars had a card that was like, when a card is put in your soul, +1 and take it from your soul, or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just awesome. If it's a really good card, and you must run it if you're really going to run the mill mechanic. And since that kind of is Great Nature's new clan ability, you really have no choice but to run it. So that's my grade 1 lineup. And then let's talk triggers, because most people just run like 8 front, because fronts are super important in this deck, but I run a little bit different. So obviously I run 4 draw PG, because their draw PGs are like a necessity for any deck. And then obviously 4 heal. But then where it gets a little bit different is I run 6 front instead of 8. So I fully acknowledge that front triggers are super good in this deck, because when you got so many rear guards in the front row, so many cell circles out, and you get that front trigger and you say 10k to the front row, it wins games for sure. It wins games. But then I also added 2 crit triggers, and the reason is because this deck can win, but this deck is not very good at beating protect decks, because they just perfect guard all your stuff, and you know, OTT gets huge hands, and so does Angel Feather, and they guard you, and they either deck you out or they just play the long game, and that's how they win. It obviously can win against those decks, but the reason we run the 2 crits is, you know, let's say they say no guard, and they don't expect that you have a critical trigger, and you either won the game or you put some more pressure on them, and now they have to start guarding. So the crit is a very good addition, and you can even load up like you know, the panda with a trigger, so that he's not just swinging in for like 37k by himself, which isn't as scary as 37k 2 crit, which is a scarier sentence. So it really does add pressure. And then lastly, the last grade 0 I run is the starter Blackboard Parrot, who is a starter that has the same ability as all the other starters. So this deck has some mega combos. It really is super good. And if you think about the price of the deck, this whole section here is super cheap. The draw PG I don't think is that expensive compared to like Oracle Think Tank's draw PG. And then triggers are obviously just common. You can probably pick up this whole stack for like $4 or $5, unless the trigger goes up in price soon. Monoculus Tiger is like cents. He's like 50 cents a piece or so. So that whole stack is like less than $2. He's worth nothing. These cards are worth nothing really. So this whole stack maybe would be worth $5, $6. So you're only up to 10. You've already got through all your grade 1s and 0s. Couldn't find this card because he's a promo online. I don't know why that is, but I traded for him at VCS Atlanta, so he's a new addition to the deck. I'm sure you've either got friends who have him or you can pick him up somewhere, but I had a harder time finding him. But he's cheap. I mean, he's not really worth that much. In terms of the cost of the grade 2 lineup, these are worth, you know, pocket change. Same with the panda. Email me and I will give you some of these cards. But then Binoculus Tiger is the first card that's actually worth something. These 3 are maybe worth like $2.50 a piece. Maybe a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure. And then this is the OR, so he's worth a lot. But you don't have to run the OR. But it's if you ran all regular Binoculus Tiger, it would probably just be $10. And so you've spent, for this whole stack of cards, which is the majority of the deck, you've spent like $20 maybe. But then this is where your wallet will get hurt a little bit more. Nothing horrible, but a little bit more. I think he's about 18 a piece, which hurts. So this is about 60. So the deck has gone up to $80 in price. And then he's pretty cheap. And then this card is a couple bucks. So if I had to estimate, it'd be like a $90 deck. I spent more on it because I bought boxes, but I also got Genesis stuff, so it was a good, win-win. But yeah, this deck is super cheap. When you consider, think about Murakumo, which is another like deck that's in the same tier as this Great Nature deck. It's like, $90 versus Zambaku is $20, and Shirayuki is $8, and Zangeki's $5, and those are your grade 3s that you run. And then you've got to pick up right and left arresters, and you got to pick up like Jakatsu Girl support and stuff in the draw PGs, and it just adds up super quick. I have built that deck as well, and I will make a deck profile on it here, but man, this deck is like super cheap, super good. So yeah, that about does it for this video. I hope you learned something about my favorite clan in the game, which is Great Nature. And I'll be posting a Murakumo deck profile on here soon. So thank you guys.